Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 10th of December 2013. So in today's news, we only have two topics, but there's some very good news. They are both fantastic things that are definitely worthy of discussion. Now, one thing before I jump into the topics themselves, the background footage for this video is me doing PvP on a warrior that has hardly any gear while I was basically in half brain dead mode watching videos on YouTube on my other monitor. So yeah, don't expect the best gameplay in the planet, but don't worry, once I do get geared up I plan on at least trying to be a little bit skilled. Anyway, let's jump right into the news. So they are adding in one of the new Warlords of Draenor features now. Well, when I say now, I'm not too sure exactly when, but it's upcoming, that's all we know. Now this feature is the new scaling in flexible difficulty, so this really is going to be a very large and I suppose wide-reaching change to flexible difficulty. So what they're doing is they're scaling things so that ability breakpoints are greatly diminished. So you may be wondering, what is a breakpoint? Well, here's an example. Say there's something like Malkorok. Now on Malkorok what he does is he spawns a number of void zones. That's fine, and the number of void zones that he spawns scales up with the amount of players. But here's the thing. Say you have 13 players, and maybe that means that 2 void zones spawn. And then you add a 14th person, and that means that 3 spawn. Does that 14th person justify the extra difficulty of having a disproportionately higher ratio of void zones to players? No, probably not. And that's what's called a breakpoint. Essentially, it's a bit of a jump in difficulty that, it's not, the difficulty doesn't follow a smooth straight line for the number of players, it has spikes at places. We don't want that, because we want the difficulty level to be flat throughout the entire spectrum of raid sizes that are available and flexible. So this is something that's going to be addressed, and I'll get onto that in a minute. What they said is, you should never feel encouraged to turn away interested players whose skill or gear matches the rest of the group's basic rule composition constraints notwithstanding. But at the same time, you shouldn't feel like you need to go out and grab warm bodies if you have a perfectly serviceable raid already assembled. Clearly we have not yet fully realised these goals, and yes, that is true, and really the breakpoints are probably the main reason. Now, right now, the way things work, it favours larger groups since boss HP and damage scale more slowly than raid throughput does. This means that as groups get bigger, it is proportionally a little bit easier. For example, an 18-player raid that had 12 DPS players will probably kill a boss slightly faster than a 10-player raid that has 6 damage dealers. That's even with the damage dealers having the same amount of DPS. And then in addition to this, there are breakpoints. So, they are adding in one of the Warlords of Draenor features, and the best way to, I suppose, example this or whatever, to show you, is to give you an example. So today, Sun Tenderheart's Shadowword Bane will affect 2 targets if your raid size is between 10 and 14, but it will hit a third if your target is at 15. And one of the upcoming changes that's going to be in place is that if you have a 13-player raid, there will be a 60% chance for each cast of that ability to hit 3 targets, and a 40% chance to hit 2. If you were to add an extra player, and thus have 14 players, then you would have an 80% chance for 3 debuffs to go out, and a 20% chance for only 2. So what this means is, on average, the amount of debuffs or void zones or whatever per player should remain essentially roughly the same as your raid scales up from 10 to 25. This smooths out difficulty curves, and it means that, well, a lot of the time people, they're not going to want to bench someone just for one boss because of a certain breakpoint, or they're not going to have to go and grab more people. As for this whole issue of raid throughput scaling a little bit faster than the boss's damage and health, I didn't really see anything exactly to address that issue, but they did say they would have some further upcoming announcements about that. Still, for right now, I think this is a fantastic thing. It definitely promotes the idea of flexibility. This system is so damn flexible, and it's just getting more and more flexible the more they refine it, which is just fantastic. And yeah, I honestly think this is one of the best, just flexible in general. It's just one of the best systems they have added to the game. It allows for so much, not just so much freedom for players, and they still get to do the kind of raid content that many of us love, so it's all good. Now next, let's talk about Warlords of Draenor Heroic Dungeon Difficulty. Now this is pretty awesome news. So first of all, we had a post, and someone was talking about the idea of Mythic Heroics. Now first I just, well, I'll talk about Mythic Heroics myself, because I'm not saying I came up with the idea, I didn't, but it was an idea that I came up with, I think it was on my first or second Q&A, which reminds me I need to get back to recording the Q&A, but anyway. Basically the idea of this is that it's a difficulty level for dungeons that is above Heroic, and it's really basically just as hard as, say, a raid is, well, probably more as hard as a flexible raid is, because if these things were ultra hard, then because there's only 5 players, it would limit them very much on encounter design, because you can't count on some classes being there. But still, in general, a harder version of Heroics. They would give you perhaps better gear. Better gear, maybe cooler looking gear. Just in general, the sort of reward structure that goes in with higher item level stuff. Maybe they have an item level that's 5 or 10 or 15 higher, no, let's just say 8 or 10 higher than a heroic dungeon, but perhaps not as much as a raid or something like that. Now that was originally the kind of idea, but they would have a bit more difficulty, and they'd also require to use CC and that sort of thing. Basically similar to the way Cataclysm Heroics were. Now, they said that this is probably not going to happen, but don't worry, there is really good news nested in here. So, yes, they said that Heroics are going to get harder. Now, in Warlords of Draenor, there will be normal dungeons at level 100, and Heroic dungeons at level 100. In Mists of Pandaria, there was really just Heroics at level 90. There weren't any normals, and that meant that the Heroics, they nearly felt the gap of what a max level normal dungeon would feel like, and I think that in terms of difficulty, that's definitely the gap they filled, bar perhaps 1 or 2, but in general, very easy. In fact, I remember them being distinctly easier than, say, the Wrath of the Lich King ones were in the day. Of course, they are much easier than the ones in Cataclysm. However, I do think the ones in Cataclysm were tuned a little bit too high for a random pug group. Although, that said, I really enjoyed them in guild runs. So, yeah, unfortunately they did say no mythic level, but because of there being normal and heroics at level 100, it means there's an extra layer of progression, which means that the heroics can be a little bit harder. So you hit level 100, you maybe have your quest gear, you can do a few normal dungeons to get some basic start or endgame gear, and then you can move into heroics. And because the heroics will be able to assume you have that prior normal gear, they can be tuned so they make a little bit more sense and they actually feel some semblance of heroic. They did say that they are going to be doing quite a lot of just looking about. Now, they did say the challenge modes are actually still great for players who are craving that sort of thing, but they did say that they could be reworked and perhaps changed a little bit so that the time trial aspect could be downplayed. I heard actually a very valid criticism that because it's so much of a time trial, it discourages sort of more slow and methodical play. I think that's definitely unfortunate from hard content, although I'm definitely not against time trials being there because it definitely offers fun gameplay. And that said though, I don't really know if challenge modes are done by a giant amount of people. And I think I remember someone in Blizzard saying a while ago that perhaps they were not as popular as they first imagined. That would definitely make sense to me. They were actually quite interested in players just giving ideas for what a good reward structure would be for a reworked challenge mode. Honestly, I'm happy with transmog gear, and I think perhaps if they could put in, I wouldn't be too pissed off. Actually, I wouldn't be pissed off at all if challenge mode ones would have maybe gear that's just a little bit harder than heroics or something like that. I don't know, but that said, if challenge modes are still going to have the thing where they normalize your gear, I don't really think there should be a gear reward that has a high item level. It's kind of hard to work that one out really, because challenge modes, they're not just a straight difficulty increase from normal, they're like a side grade kind of, you know, they're different take in the same thing, but it's still fundamentally different. Anyway, so there's a bit of a good quote here in regards to the heroics. So, having said that, the current planned difficulty scheme for 5-mans at max level is normal, heroic, and challenge mode. Right off the bat, we can clearly say that Warlords of Draenor heroics will be harder than Mists of Pandaria heroics. Now, we're not actually planning in making them as hard as the hardest heroics of all time, like the ones in the Burning Crusade, or Grim Batol and Stonecore from Cataclysm. However, nothing is set in stone yet. We are still thinking about what the right difficulty for anything would be in Warlords of Draenor, and your continued feedback will definitely help us find that elusive sweet spot for a perfect tiered difficulty system. All good, I suppose. Honestly, I think the key thing there is tiered difficulty system. Because Mists of Pandaria didn't have that clear split between max level normals and max level heroics, it took out a tier there, and instead of there just being a gap between questing gear and heroics, that gap was fulfilled by heroics getting easier, and I don't really think that was the right way to do it. Anyway, that is it for today's show. One little thing I want to mention at the end, because of all the different YouTube changes and things that are going on for us content-y people that don't really affect you guys that much, though some of your like Let's Player people you might watch could actually disappear overnight because of content ID claims, yay. Anyway, because of these things, we can't really like rely 100% on YouTube advertising, because soon our videos will be put through reviews and stuff like that, and because my YouTube video money is what pays for my rent and things like that, and basically, just to keep myself safe, I have an Amazon affiliate link in the description of this video, and I'll probably just keep that sort of thing there. Basically, check out my Twitter, by the way. I kind of released like a little paragraph on it explaining, but like I get like 2%. So basically, I would never ask someone to buy anything just so it helps me. Do not, just don't. But if someone was, say, buying something from Amazon anyway, and they would, I don't know, consider helping me out a little bit with keeping things going, it would be greatly appreciated. It doesn't take anything from your pocket, and it helps me get a little bit of change that goes towards rent and things, and means that I don't have to get a part-time job, which would essentially be partial, not a death of YouTube, but it would really it'd hurt the content schedule. I do kind of work this thing like a job. It does take like 5-6 hours a day, but hey, it's worth it. I like love every second of it. It's the perfect kind of job to have. For me anyway. But yeah, just thought I'd get that out. I will do just a full video explaining what's going on, why I'm doing this. It's safe to say a lot of other YouTubers are very worried. I know that personally I have had today 5 content ID matches with Blizzard trailers. Now that's okay because Blizzard don't take videos down, but say if they were like, if that was gameplay from a company that wasn't cool with YouTube things, then I could just get 5 copyright strikes, the channel would disappear, and unfortunately that's happening to a lot of people, so I definitely think this is worth maybe one of those more structured videos, just to explain to people the sort of thing that's going on. But anyway, understanding is appreciated. If you have any questions, do just leave them for me in the comments. I totally get why this is like, I know might seem weird to some people, but don't worry, you're not going to see me adorned in Mountain Dew and Doritos like certain other gaming people. So yeah, thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time.